You're listening to the I'm Busy Being Awesome podcast with Paula Engebretson, episode number 256. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. How are you? Today, we are talking about what may come across as a rather unpopular opinion. This is something that I have been thinking about, honestly, for years. It's something that plays around in my mind. And it's something that I talk about with clients, but I have never really brought it onto the podcast because I don't know how it will land with some people. Because when I share it, it might sound, frankly, like I am just a real downer. And what we're talking about today, for some context, is what I am calling hope versus false optimism. And again, like I said, it's going to sound, especially at the beginning of this episode, like I am anti-hope. And I am not anti-hope. I think hope is a beautiful emotion that can be incredibly useful. But I also think that a lot of us believe that we're tapping into the emotion of hope when really we're tapping into this false optimism that feels pretty terrible, actually, when we slow down and feel it. So I'm going to give some context here on what I'm even talking about, and then we're going to dive into the difference between hope and false optimism and when hope can be a really beautiful, powerful emotion and when it's not. When we have this false optimism instead that I think can actually leave us feeling pretty hopeless and stuck and desperate. Now, there is one other caveat or thing that I want to mention before we dive in, which is that when I am talking about hope versus false optimism, it's going to probably come across like this very clear binary. Like there is one place where it is beneficial to feel hope and one place where we have this false optimism, and that's it. And that is not my intention and not what I'm trying to present here. In fact, I think that there is so much space, so much opportunity to experience the feeling of hope in incredibly powerful ways. So as you're listening to this, have in the back of your mind that I am not saying that there is either one or the other. There is hope in this one specific area or false optimism in the other. I'm keeping it in this kind of binary as I present it, just to make the false optimism side of things more clear. So we have something to compare it to. And also, please know that hope is as I mentioned, incredibly powerful emotion that we can use to fuel so much. And it's not only in this one area where I'm going to present it. Instead, I'm using this one area as an example to help distinguish the false optimism. And this might sound a little bit weird and abstract because we haven't gotten into the content yet. So stick with me. It will all fall into place as you listen, but just keep in the back of your mind that I'm not saying hope is only applicable in this one area. Instead, I'm using it to help really highlight where the false optimism tends to pop up. Okay? So, as I like to do when we look into topics like this, is start with a definition. So let's start with a definition of what hope is. According to the Oxford Language Dictionary, hope is a feeling of expectation and a desire for a certain thing to happen. And second definition, a want, something to happen or be the case. So again, these are both great definitions and great things, okay? Great emotions. This feeling of hope, I am all in when we are actually using it in a situation where it feels supportive, where it feels empowering, where it helps us feel that sense of expectation and that desire for the thing to happen. So let's actually talk about those times first. When is it quite useful to tap into this feeling of hope? When do we want to tap into hope and use it for us as this really powerful emotion? Let's start here. I think hope is really supportive, incredibly useful when we are looking at circumstances that are out of our control. So when things are happening in the world, big or small, and we have no control over them, I think hope is a beautiful thing. Let me give you a whole bunch of random examples to put this into context. I might want to hope on good weather. I hope it doesn't rain for the ceremony, or I hope my flight is on time so I can make my connection, or I hope this treatment works. I hope they are feeling better soon. I hope they have just the best time on their vacation. So again, big situations, small situations, it doesn't matter. When it is a situation that is out of our control and we are genuinely hoping for a desired outcome, I think that can feel beautiful. It can be opening, it can be optimistic, it can be uplifting, and it can help us stay in that mindset of what we want. It can help us stay there. I hope that we have a sunny day for this event. I hope that security at the airport is really quick. Okay, anything that is out of our control, I am all in. Let's hope all day long because that feels amazing. Now, here's the deal. Before I started thinking about the differences between these types of hope, whether it's hope or what I'm calling false optimism, I used to just group everything under the umbrella of hope. And I would say, I hope for all the things. However, I started noticing that saying I hope with something after it, or fingers crossed, or knock on wood, or whatever, it didn't always feel supportive. It didn't always feel good. It didn't always feel light and optimistic. Sometimes it felt pretty terrible when I slowed down and sat with it. Sometimes it felt like this twinge of hopeless. It felt a little bit desperate, a little bit needy when I was using the words, I hope so, or here's hoping. And so I noticed this difference in my body and how the emotion actually felt. Was it a nice experience for me or not? And when I realized there were some differences, I started getting curious. I thought, how come this feeling of hope, or what I think is hope, feels different in my body at different times? That's weird. And as I started paying attention to this, I noticed that most of the time when it felt terrible or off or a little bit uncomfortable, it was when I was using hope for things that were within my control. When I would say something like, fingers crossed I can make this happen. I hope I can stick with this routine. Knock on wood that I'm on time this time. I hope I can get myself to do it. Here's hoping I can get my act together. Do you use hope in this way at any time? Are you ever in situations where you're talking about yourself and you're going, here's hoping. I hope I can do it. I hope I can stick to it. Fingers crossed that I can make it happen. If so, notice how that feels in your body compared to when you have your niece's birthday party and you go, oh, I hope that rain holds off. Notice the difference in your body. Now, again, this could be unpopular opinion, as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, and this may not be true for you. Hope may feel amazing all the time when you're saying it. If that's the case, then just leave behind everything I'm saying. Because again, with this podcast, everything is here for you. Use the things that land, leave the things that don't. But for those of you who resonate with this, for those of you who go, it does feel a little bit different in my body when I am using the phrase, I hope, or here's hoping, or fingers crossed in situations where things are outside of my control versus inside of my control. And here's what I've noticed about this. When I am using that phrase, hope so, I hope I can, here's hoping, fingers crossed, and I am using that phrase in situations where I am in the driver's seat, what it's really doing is suggesting underneath some pretty words of hope that I don't think I can do it. What it's really doing is expressing that I have a bunch of doubt that I don't want to slow down and look at. Instead, I want to sweep it under the rug and just tell myself I'm going to hope and cross my fingers and knock on wood and all the other things to try and push myself through and get over the doubt and make it happen. That's why I'm calling it false optimism. Because the hope isn't actually there. We're just kind of slapping the word hope on top of a bunch of doubt or worry or insecurity or uncertainty. Instead, we're using this word hope that sounds so pretty, and we're putting it on top of a bunch of emotions where we're doubting whether we can do the thing or not. So no wonder that feels awful, because we're trying to get over or ignore feelings of doubt, worry, insecurity, fear, anxiety. Of course, that doesn't feel good. So when we actually slow down and we pause and go, oh, I keep using the words fingers crossed, or here's hoping, or I hope I can do this, or I hope I can make it happen, or I hope I can finally stick with it, or whatever. And we notice, hold on, I feel actually really anxious, or I feel this sense of desperation or neediness. That feels really awful when I actually slow down and sit with it. What is going on here? Usually what's going on here is that we have emotions underneath this phrase, let's hope, and we're ignoring them, instead painting this false optimism on top. Whenever I used this phrase in that way, what it really meant is that I didn't really believe that I could do the thing or stick to the schedule or follow through on the plan or reach the goal, but I didn't want to actually acknowledge that to myself because that would mean I didn't believe in myself. So instead, I would just ignore those feelings and slap some false optimism on top and tell myself, here's hoping. Hope I can do it. And what I've found is that for myself and for a lot of my clients, that false optimism is just not helpful. It is not helpful, and it can actually hold us back because there is so much we can learn from those uncomfortable feelings underneath the false optimism, underneath those crossed fingers. When we're willing to slow down and actually sit with those moments when we would otherwise say, fingers crossed, there's so much we can learn underneath, because otherwise, this is a weird analogy, but it's kind of like spraying a whole bunch of perfume on top of garbage. The garbage is still there, and it doesn't matter how much perfume you spray on top of it, it still is going to have that smell. Okay? That's the same with all of these thoughts that have us doubting and worrying and insecure. That's all still there. We're just spraying a bunch of perfume on top with this phrase, I hope, and crossing our fingers and knocking on wood. So again, definitely check in with yourself. Notice if this is the case for you. Maybe it's not, and that's very possible, okay? But if this is true for you, and there are times when you're using these hopeful phrases when maybe there's some emotion underneath that deserves to be heard a little bit, then this next part is for you, okay? What do we do? What do we do when we start noticing, whoa, okay, I know there are times when saying I hope so and knocking on wood and crossing my fingers and being optimistic, sometimes that is amazing and I can feel when it actually feels supportive and good. But also I hear you. I get it. I notice that there are times when it doesn't feel that way and when it feels a little bit desperate or uncertain and I'm just trying to get past the uncomfortable feeling. If that resonates with you, here's what we do. First of all, I suggest that you start noticing the times when these phrases come up most often for you. As I mentioned, for myself, I kind of kept a log. I didn't literally write it down. I was just keeping a running track in my mind of, I tend to be using I hope so and knock on wood and fingers crossed a lot when I'm trying to learn a new skill or stick to a habit or follow a routine or stick to my schedule or whatever, and I'm doubting I can do it. I see that's coming up a lot. Good to know. So for you, I invite you to start creating greater awareness around when these phrases show up for you. Maybe it's more at work. Maybe it's more in relationship situations. Maybe it's more at home or following through on routines for decluttering and keeping the home tidy or whatever. Where do you notice it coming up most for you? That's where we want to start. From there, we're actually going to slow down and be in those moments. We're going to slow down and be in the uncomfortable rather than plowing through it and slapping some false optimism on top. So check in with yourself. How am I feeling? Where do I notice it? Is my chest really tight? Do my shoulders feel up toward my ears? Are they scrunched really high? Is my gut tight? Do I feel this sinking? What's going on here? How does it feel in my body? Okay, so we're going to get really curious about that first. Just notice the sensations in your body. Then we're going to check in and go, hey, what are you here to share with me? And by you, yes, I am talking to the emotion. Okay, what are you here to teach me? Hey, doubt, I notice you in my chest, feeling pretty heavy and kind of squeezy. What's going on? What are we doubting? What are we worried about? Why do we feel uncertain? Please also notice the tone of my voice. We're not judging. We're not going, why are you so uncertain? Why are you feeling insecure? What's your problem? No. We are checking in with so much love and we're going, hey, how come we're feeling some doubt here around this goal? Or how come we're uncertain about this schedule? What's going on here? Why are we feeling a little bit nervous? Why do we want to just slap the false optimism on top? Let's check in. What's going on? Okay, so that's the next step is we're going to get really curious and figure out why this emotion is here. It's here for a good reason. So let's pause and figure that out. All right, so first we're creating awareness of when we want to slap the false optimism on it. Then we're creating awareness of how it feels in our body, what that actual sensation is. And then we're checking in with it. We're going, hey, what are you here for? What are you here to teach me? How can I support you? And then from there, this is going to sound a little bit counterintuitive, but we're actually going to allow ourselves to go to that worst case scenario. Okay, so if you're feeling a lot of doubt, if you're feeling really worried, what are we really worried might happen? Or let's say you're doubting and it doesn't happen. You don't follow through on the plan or you don't stick with the habit. Then what? What's that worst case scenario? And we allow ourselves to actually look at it rather than continuing to sweep it under the rug and slap on some false positivity. Okay, so here's what this would look like. Let's say I notice every time I want to start this new meal planning routine or something, I'm feeling a lot of doubt and I want to just say, fingers crossed I follow through with the plan. And I notice that. And I go, okay, hold on. That's coming up. Every time I think about this, what's underneath here? What don't I want to look at? And I go, oh, okay, there's some doubt here. I can kind of feel this squishy, squeezy feeling in my gut. I'm like, oh, this feels like a whole lot of doubt. I just don't think I'm going to stick with it. And I go, okay, how come you think we can't stick with it? And I pause and I check in with that emotion and I realize, oh, I think it's here because every time I've done this before, I have really high standards that are just not possible with the time I have. I keep expecting myself to do all of this really intricate food planning and prepping and all of this stuff. And I just don't have the capacity or the desire to do it. It's like I'm setting myself up for failure because I keep making the demand way too high and I'm not giving myself the supports so I could actually make it happen. Okay, I hear you, doubt. No wonder you're here because this is the exact same plan I've made again. I have a really elaborate meal plan with all the things and I can already feel the doubt, but I didn't want to look at that. Instead, I just wanted to say, fingers crossed, let's hope it works this time. Okay, so I noticed. I then paused to see how it felt. I checked in with that feeling. I learned why it was here. And I learned that the big obstacle, the reason why I'm feeling so much doubt is that I created much too high of an expectation without any proper supports in place that would allow me to stick with it. Good to know. Then I might go to that last step. Okay, so let's say I don't stick with it. Then what? Like, what's the thing that I'm really worried might happen? And I might realize, okay, well, if you don't follow through, first of all, you're going to waste all of that grocery money again, because we've done this many times before and all those vegetables just end up slimy and in the garbage because you didn't follow through. Okay, thank you. I hear that. For sure, I can understand why I would be worried about that again, because probably I would beat myself up for doing it again and not following through. Yeah. So, worst case is that I would waste some money on vegetables and whatever other ingredients I might not cook with. And then I'd probably feel disappointed in myself for not sticking to the plan. Okay. So, how can we support ourselves? This is the last step. What can we do to help ensure that we make whatever this plan is easier? So again, if we stick with this meal thing that I'm playing around with, what can I do to make the steps easier? What can I do to lower those expectations? So I'm not expecting a multi-course meal instead of a heat and eat something. How can I meet myself where I am so that I can tap into a different emotion other than this false optimism that I'm just trying to slap on top of a bunch of doubt and uncertainty and insecurity? Do you see how much we can learn from this? Do you see how much more empowering it is to slow down and check in with that discomfort that's underneath the fingers crossed and the knocking on wood and the here's hoping? Do you see how we can learn so much and then support ourselves to make the progress we want to when we're willing to sit down and check in on those uncomfortable emotions? I'm telling you, it's so powerful because once we're willing to do this, quite often we can open up to a handful of other thoughts that might feel equally as available, but way more supportive. Because once we've gotten to that place, then we can usually start trying on some different thoughts that might feel a little bit strange at first, kind of like trying on a new style you've never worn before. But you try it on and you're like, ooh, it feels a little weird, but I kind of like it. I kind of like this style. Okay. So rather than your usual outfit of here's hoping, I hope I can do this, fingers crossed, knock on wood, rather than that usual outfit, we're trying on something else that also fits and might look a little different, but it also looks really good. Okay. So maybe we try on the thought, I want to do this. I intend to make this happen. I'm becoming someone who XYZ. I'm working toward this goal that I really want. I'm willing to work toward this. I want this to happen. I'm choosing to give it a try. This is important to me. I'm going to keep trying until I make it happen. I'm going to make this happen. I'm offering a whole bunch of different thoughts because they're all going to land differently. And we all have different relationships with different thoughts like this. But I encourage you to try on different ones. Again, just as if you grabbed a whole bunch of different styles in the fitting room and you're trying them all on and you're seeing which ones go, ooh, that one. That's my new style. We are leaving behind the old style. Did any of you ever used to watch What Not to Wear? I don't even know if it's still on anymore. But they get rid of all of the old styles. They're like, you can't wear these anymore. That's what I want us to do with these false optimistic thoughts. Here's hoping, fingers crossed, hope I can do it. No, we're leaving those outfits behind. Those are not what we're wearing. And we're finding new thoughts that fit us and support us in the roles we want to do, in the goals we want to reach, in the habits and routines we want to follow. So allow yourself time to try on these different thoughts so you can step into this new mindset that allows you to stick with the routine or follow through on the habit or keep working toward the goal as you figure out the next steps. This is such an important, though slight, distinction because it puts you in the driver's seat. When we are constantly thinking, I hope I can, my fingers are crossed, I'm knocking on wood, when we're hoping, we are out of control. We have no say. But once we take it back and we go, I want this to happen. This is important to me. I'm going to keep trying until I make it happen. That puts us in the driver's seat. And for my fellow control freaks out there, that feels so much better. Okay? And for my non-control freaks, but who just want to feel more empowered, it feels so much better when we are in the driver's seat and we're not just hoping. However, that's also why I say I love hope in situations that are out of our control. Let's hope all day long. That is beautiful. Let's put our hope toward those situations where we can't control the weather or the flight times or whether or not your sister-in-law has a good time on their vacation. But you can hope that they do, and you can do that with so much love. That feels good. In short, I think hope is a remarkably beautiful emotion that I want all of us to tap into as much as possible when it's supportive. However, when it's turning into false optimism and we're sweeping those uncomfortable emotions under the rug, that's where I want us to pause. I want us to check in and learn from the doubt, the worry, the fear, the insecurity, the anxiety. Check in with those emotions. See what you can learn from them so that you can put the supports in place, put yourself in the driver's seat, and start feeling more empowered and capable and ready to do whatever it is that you want to do. All right, my friends, that's going to do it for us this week. And if you want to take this work further, if you want to dive in and learn how to work with your ADHD brain in a way that works for you, I would love to help you do it. We can work together either in my small group coaching program, We're Busy Being Awesome, or in one-on-one coaching, and you can learn about both through the link in the show notes. Also, do you know somebody who would love to hear this episode? If so, be a rock star and share this with them. You could send it to them in a text, share it on your Instagram stories, whatever you do. Please know that I appreciate it so much because you are helping get these tools to even more busy, awesome brains who need it. Until next time, keep being awesome. I'll talk with you soon.